Hello everyone, the following is a video tutorial for how to create an assembly for our CANstruction project using Fusion 360. On the screen currently, I put together what looks like, or is supposed to look like, a hand, which is paired with this year's theme, Give a Can, Lend a Hand. And so I just stacked some different Campbell soup cans in here and some mac and cheese boxes to somewhat resemble an upright hand. On a second tab here, I've been working on a different assembly using the same types of elements and also created an additional part file here for a clock and some parts that we would maybe laser cut or cut out on the ShopBot to dress up what is a grandfather clock design. So one of the groups in my class this year is making a grandfather clock, and we were just kind of playing around with some of these ideas in class the other day to show how exactly something like this can be done. And so there are a few main ways to get these items here into the space and get them populated and assembled and all put together. As I look down underneath the create drop down menu here, pattern, rectangular pattern, circular pattern. I haven't used this one just yet, pattern on a path, but all three of these will be very helpful in getting multiples of these types of items in here. That's how I created the majority of these mac and cheese boxes. I laid one row of this on the bottom, and then I used the rectangular pattern feature just to send them all the way up and create multiples of them in a much quicker fashion. Another helpful tool could be the mirror feature as well. If you have something that's going to be symmetrical, you build it on the right side, you can just mirror it over to the left side and again save yourself some time. The other way is to simply just drag parts in one at a time. I'll demonstrate that here for 1 second. If I grab this clock part, you can actually just drag it right from your data panel into your design space. When it gets dropped in here, right away you have the option to move it around. It usually gets put into the origin right at 0, 0. So what I've been doing is just pulling it off to the side, getting it to a place where I can work with it, say okay over here for the move and copy feature, and now I have that item out here, and what I would do from there is apply joints to it to get it all put together. So manually bringing in parts one at a time and constraining them into place using a joint feature, or using those pattern features to create multiples of these items, and again saving yourself some time and effort there. So what I want to do is create a new file. I'll start from scratch here and give you a demo on how some of those features actually play out. And so if I just go to File, New Design, start with a blank screen, and we're going to pull in one of those parts. For me, I'm going to pull in my soup can part. And again, just grabbing it from the data panel, dropping it here into the design space, it automatically gets put into the origin. It's telling me down here, please save this design before inserting components, which is kind of odd considering there's nothing in there to really save yet. But either way, I'll just go to File up here and click Save. And I'll call this Assembly Demo Video. I'm just making sure that it's in the right location. Always check your location here, make sure you're in the right project folder and then the right organizational folder. So I'm going to be putting this into my folder for today. I'm clicking Save here. Now that I've done that, I should be able to pull this can in. And again, just drop this off into the design space. Automatically got put onto the origin. And because this is the first item that I'm bringing in, I might not need to move it around. It can really just sit right at the origin there. So I'm going to say okay. And one of the principal things of starting an assembly file is the very first part that you put in should be what we call grounded, meaning it's going to be permanently attached to that origin point and it won't be able to move around anymore. And as we build out our assemblies, a quick way just to lock parts in place and stop them from moving around on you is to ground them. So to do that, I can just right click here. It's the second option from the top and just say ground that part. There should be a little push pin icon that shows up now on the cube or on the cube here. I believe I can also just right click the part here in the design space and find the same option for grounding and ungrounding if you decide to change that later on. So now that I've grounded that first part, I can start to build off of this, right? And so let me just bring in another can. And again, it's going to put it right in the center there. So I'm just going to grab one of my directional arrows and move it out of the way. Click OK. And now this can still move around. If I click on it and try to move it around, this can still move. If I try to do that here, this one should not because it's grounded, right? It's not going to move around at all. So if I want this can to maybe sit on top of this one, that's going to be a joint. And if you click on the Assemble drop-down menu, you can see there's lots of options here. We're going to get into them as we move forward this year, especially second semester with our Automata project, a lot of the movement, different joints and things like that. So if I click on joint right here, we have position, which is the most basic thing that we can do. And then later on, second semester with Automata, these are the types of constraints we'll be using further underneath the motion category. So position here, notice that the first part is grayed out. It's kind of ghosted out. It's because it's grounded. There's nothing for us to click on. The only other part that is available for us to click on is the second can that we brought in. You'll notice when I bring my mouse over that part and start moving it around, all these different icons are showing up, and that is going to be our attachment points. I also like to call that the centroid of the shape or of the object that you're seeing. Now, centroids are something that you'll learn about in the Principles of Engineering course. It's basically just a point based on the geometry of the object that is directly in the center of that shape. Okay, so a little knowledge about the future. So there's lots of different points that you can grab. You can grab the absolute center. I can grab the top middle. I can grab the bottom. And that's what I want to do here. Just one thing to be considered when you're grabbing this point, make sure you're not grabbing the recessed part of that lip that we created on this part file. We want to grab the outer ring. That way it's going to be at the very most top or bottom part of this can. We don't want the cans glitching through each other. So just something to pay attention to. So for this, the first one I'm going to grab is just going to be this bottom ring of the can. And notice now this can was grayed out. And because this is the only other option for me to attach it to, this part is now visible. And I'll just do the opposite of that. I selected the bottom ring here. On this one, I'll select the top ring. Those 2 points basically snap together. And then you have some options here to finesse and change that a little bit. We can angle it. We can offset it in X, Y, and Z direction. You can flip it if you want it to go up or down. But I want it to sit right on top there. So where I put it is exactly where I need it. I'll just say OK. Now notice if I try to click that can, not able to move it around anymore because it is attached to a part that is grounded. All right, there is a little icon that showed up because of that joint that we added. And once you start to build this whole thing out, you're going to have a lot of these. You can click it, right click it, and say show or hide and turn the visibility off for them one at a time. Also found down here under the display settings, if we go to object visibility, you can just deselect joints when you're done building your model, and that'll turn all of them off for you at once. So we just reviewed placing one item at a time. Let's go ahead and try using one of the pattern features. So I'm going to grab another can, place this out here, drag it off center, say OK. And now I'm going to do another joint from the bottom of that can to the bottom of this one. And now this time I want to space it out. I want to do an offset. I just want it to sit right outside of where this can is. And so to do that, I will offset it in the X direction. My can is 3 inches wide. So if I offset this by 3 inches, that should put it perfectly tangent to the other can. And you can see it made a nice form there. So I'm just going to say, OK, 3 inches offset on X. And now what I can do is try one of these pattern features. I'm going to go for circular pattern first. And with this option, you have different types, face, bodies, features, components. We're going to try to pattern a component, the actual can file. So I'm going to switch to components here. Select what objects you want to pattern, and then switch over to axis. For the axis, I can just grab that center can, and it's going to populate some additional objects for us. You can tell it to have particular spacing if you want to do full angle or symmetrical, and then you can adjust the quantity here as well. So it looks like by adding 6 cans, if I switch to a top-down view, those all come together very nicely, tangent with each other. Adding 6 cans, I'm going to say OK. And so now, just within that one feature, I was able to add 6 additional files, or I guess 5 additional, without having to place and constrain each and every single one of them. However, I did notice that when you bring that in like this, some of these cans are still going to be movable. So what I would suggest, instead of jointing them all and then offsetting them into their current positions, we can simply just ground them. So if I shift select and grab all of those at once, just right click and say grounded, now those aren't going to move around on me anymore. Okay. Next option, I'll go to create and do a rectangular pattern. On this one, again, you get the same options for type. We're going to go to components, select what items I would like to pattern. I'm just going to grab this center can. And then we have to establish a direction. So if I click on direction here, using the origin axis, kind of hard to see, it's inside of these cans right here. I want to send this can going up. And then you have two options here for distance type, either extent or spacing. Really just depends what values you want to type in. And in order to see something here on the screen, I actually just have to get a distance going. So I'd want that to be the height of my can. Let's switch this to spacing here and say 4.5 inches. I think that's just about right. That looks right to me. So 4.5 inches for the spacing on this one. And again, if you play with the quantity, you can add multiples of these going straight up. There is an option here to select two directions when doing a rectangular pattern. You can send things out both horizontally and vertically. And just by filling in the rest of the panel here, you can do something like that. So I'm going to click OK. Again, adding more cans in a lot quicker of a fashion, but keep in mind they're not grounded or tethered to anything. So I'm just going to right click on them and ground them in place. And then we covered the mirror feature before, but again, if you're dealing with something that's symmetrical, you can build half of it on one side, mirror it all over some plane, and then have that be built out for you on the opposite side. So it's just a real quick tutorial here on how to build out some of your assembly files. Certainly, if you're dealing with rectangular objects, it gets even easier. So if I bring in a mac and cheese box here, just drag it off center, say OK to place that, and then as you go to join it, you'll see as you move around on the object, you have all these different nodes that you can grab and attach those parts to. So let's say I want to put one mac and cheese box all the way at the top there, facing flat. I can move to the back side of this object, grab the centroidal location on the center back, and then up here on that top can, grab the center point on the outer ring up there as well. Now this is actually a good thing, it flipped it, and so that gives me a chance to use that flip option, sending it in the right direction. And I can just perch that up on top there. So hopefully you have fun building out your models. And if you have any questions on how to put some of these more intricate things together, certainly ask for help, because anything is possible. Hope you enjoyed the video. See you next time.